Whoops, looks like my mic was muted. Good evening. This is the Dominance Academy, and I'm your host, Mr. Justin. And got a little show for you about men's issues in relationships. And, it's something that I don't really think about, something that I'm not privy to, just because, I don't know, I just don't live an average lifestyle. So, I'm curious what the mainstream has to say about this stuff, and it was interesting. But I think the most interesting part was I went to multiple websites geared towards men, and and I noticed that they all said the same thing. Now I don't know if that means that they are stealing from each other, like they can't come up with original content or original research, and they're just kind of borrowing from each other and making articles online, or within the research they're coming across the same results. So who knows? But like, I guess like regular guys who don't really know how to manage relationships, how to be in relationships or whatever, they fall prey to pretty simple stuff. And it's, I don't know, it's just mind-boggling to me. It really is. And the things that they were bothered with is the stuff that seems pretty regular to me, like something that's just normal and expected, and it doesn't seem like it should be so troublesome. But we'll get into that. What's up, Uncle Guns? Thanks for popping in. So yeah, let's take a look. So I went to like a number of different websites geared towards men, like Men's Health magazine and shit like that. And since they all said the same thing, I pulled up this one. It's by calmary.com. It's a blog. And the article is all about navigating relationship difficulties as a man. And of course, it shows a picture of a guy here crying with tissues in his hand. And there's a woman looking at him with question marks over her head, like, what the fuck is going on with this dude? And so it goes into, gender stereotypes, emotions, men in relationships, how guys mess up relationships and what to do about it. And also, being a man shouldn't be that difficult. I'm not going to worry about the gender stereotypes part. So, of course it goes, when it talks about like emotions, men in relationships, it's talking about, how, guys aren't allowed to have any other emotions besides like aggression and happiness and, or stoicism. And that's all they're allowed to have. And they suppress their feelings, and then it, turns into this other shit. And I think that enough guys have had enough experience that while perhaps in the psychology manuals and things of that nature, it would be advised to express your emotions to your woman. And I think that those of us who have experience with women have come to understand that this does no good for the relationship. Maybe once in a while, if a certain something is serious enough and you just can't contain yourself. But if you're like moping about, if you're sad about just like regular shit, if you're feeling depressed, like this is going to drive down respect. It's going to drive down approval. It's going to drive down attraction. If it's too constant, like once in a blue moon, sure, fine. We all have bad days. We all have like fucked up shit that happens in our lives, and that's okay. I mean, that's life. It has ups and downs. But the idea is for men to be able to remain steady in the calamities of life. Things go up and down all the time. Even for the wealthy and successful, for people who have power, life always goes up and down. And that's just the nature of it, because you can't control everything. What you can control is how you respond to it. And in my experience, and the experience that I've talked with other men, is that remaining stable, remaining calm, remaining having that inner stillness whenever whatever's going on outside of you is going crazy, but you're able to have that inner stillness. That is valuable. That is truly valuable. And I was actually talking with a client earlier today about this. He's a new guy, and we're kind of going over little tropes and things that we hear from women. And one of them is wanting more emotion in the relationship. And women saying like, oh, I want to emotionally connect with my man. He's distant, he's cold, he's too stoic, or he's too serious. And I was explaining to him that a lot of guys make the mistake of thinking that means that the woman wants him to be more emotive, wants to show more emotion. So he tries to do this sort of thing. And oftentimes it backfires. Oftentimes it really, really backfires. And what really is the case, what really happens, is she's asking for emotional stimulation. That's what she's looking for. Like, she wants the variety, because women love variety. So they're looking for emotional stimulation within them. They want to feel more emotions. But the guy hears that and thinks, oh, she's asking to have more emotions from me. And that's not the case. That's really not what's happening. And, and it's like weird articles like this, where it's talking about guys and, having to open up and having to show your emotions and things like that. And, saying like, here, ignoring and hiding your emotions isn't a healthy approach when you're in a relationship. Such an attitude can undermine trust. As a result, men who try to fit widely accepted gender norms may deal with various relationship issues. So they're saying like men have relationship issues because they're not showing their emotions. And that is complete bullshit. Like, again, that might sound fine for the psychology manuals, but with boots on the ground, with as many men that I've talked to about being in relationships, that is not the key thing that is the glue for the relationship. And it just isn't. And I think plenty of you guys would be able to agree to that as well, if you've got that sort of experience. So, now, I don't think that men should suppress their emotions. It's just that your woman isn't the place to let that out. Okay? Go to a therapist if you have to. Talk to one of your boys if you have to. Do something physical, right? Because you can move emotions through. You don't have to talk about emotions. Emotions are just this thing that's happening, okay? And it doesn't have to always be spoken about. Like, what if you're mute, right? What if you don't have the ability to speak? Does that mean that those people are just fucked up? Like, let's say if like damaged vocal cords, like, does sign language really get it out? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think so. I really don't think so. So, I think that emotions, if they need to be, kind of moved through the body, or moved out of your system, they can move through your body through physical activity. I know that if I'm upset about something, I'm frustrated with something, I've got a lot on my mind, and there's some anxiety or something like that. If I just, do some boxing, go lifting, back when I was younger, I would run, and you're finished with it, you feel like 100 times better. So the physical activity, I think, is a fantastic way to move emotions through your body. You don't necessarily have to talk about them, and you can still benefit in the same way, right? And also, talking about them doesn't always make things better. Sometimes it makes things worse, okay? So just take that as you will. So it's saying here as well, let me just turn this down just a little bit. All right. Why do men struggle in relationships? So it's saying here that men's difficult relationships with their own feelings often result in unhealthy tendencies when it comes to relationships with other people. Masculine standards don't let men reflect on their feelings, which often leads to a complete inability to describe their emotions. Like I said, it's reflection is fine, right? That's fine. It's when you're coming out to your woman and like having this like emotional vomit on them. Like they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to have to care for that. Like, yes, like I said, once in a blue moon, every once in a while, when there's something really serious, they want to be able to take care of their man in that way. But if this is something recurring that happens on a regular basis, you don't want to be seen as the unstable one. All right. But this article is saying that, they're having difficulty in relationships because they're bottling up their emotions. And so there's a list here, a short list about the, societal expectations and stereotypes, as well as lack of communication and stigma that surrounds emotional issues among men. And here's some of the most common issues men have to deal with and some ideas to help. Okay, so the number one here, pressure to be in charge. Okay, being in charge. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm just different. I don't know. It doesn't feel like pressure. Like, sure, there's responsibility, but it doesn't feel like pressure, right? Pressure comes from something that you don't want. It only feels like pressure when you don't want to do it, okay? So it's like, I remember like when I was younger and I was in sports, and perhaps there was a game that I just didn't feel like going to, right? I didn't want to go to the swim meet, or I didn't want to go to the lacrosse game. I just didn't feel like it that day. But, my mother, she was like the organizer of sports when I was little. And so she would just push me to go. And because I didn't want to go, that is when it felt like pressure. On other times with games, when I wanted to go, it didn't feel like pressure. So pressure only it is existing when you have resistance to what you're doing. And this is anything. You don't want to go to work, it feels like pressure. You don't want to go to the dentist, it feels like pressure. You don't want to wake up in the morning, that feels like pressure, right? So anytime you have a resistance to something, it's going to feel like pressure, but the thing itself isn't inherently filled with pressure, okay? Your resistance to it. So if you just fall into the role of being in charge, then you won't have pressure. You can actually embrace the role and enjoy the role. Then it's not a problem, and therefore you don't feel any pressure, okay? So it's saying here, despite all the effort put into building an equal society, there are still too many stereotypes that shape our behavior and influence our relationships. One such stereotype is that a man should play the role of a decision maker and breadwinner. So it's known that I spend some time on Clubhouse listening to people, and the vast majority of women that speak on that app, now granted, it's a small sample, but I hear it often out in the world as well, beyond Clubhouse, all sorts of social media. Women don't want to be in charge. Like the vast majority of women don't want to be in charge of their relationships. Now, some naturally are that way. They're very, dare I say, masculine in nature, and they're comfortable that way, and that's fine, right? But that's not the majority. That's not the majority of the female population. The majority of women that I've come across, that I've heard of, wives that I've spoken to, and so on, they do not want to be in charge. They don't want the pressure of being a decision maker. They want to just be able to provide and support in their way, okay? And that's great, right? That's totally fine. So when they're in their role, it doesn't feel like pressure. They can enjoy it. They can kind of fold into it, right? And in the same way, like I was saying, like when guys are feeling this way, they're burdened with responsibility. And they feel like that there's all these expectations and so on and so forth. But this is linked to fear of disappointing the woman. Okay, so like a lot of this stuff has to, like this list here, has a lot to do with disappointing the woman and fearing her disapproval and then leaving him. Okay. So whenever you have that sort of base fear underneath everything, what's going to happen is that anything connected to the relationship is going to sort of be bouncing off of that foundation. And so whatever you do, so there's always, if the underlying feeling is fear, then everything that you do off of that is going to be affected in some sort of negative way. And that fear is going to trickle into your behaviors. It's going to trickle into your choices. It's going to trickle into your role. And it's absolutely going to affect it. So if you're, fear of losing, and then you're worried about how you're showing up, then if you're put in the role of being in charge, then it's like, oh shit, if I make a mistake, she's going to be upset. She's going to leave me. Right? So that feels like pressure, and they're backing away from that role and saying, I don't want to be in that position. And then a lot of times, either women will step up and be in that position, but this will create resentment, right? This will cause her to resent the guy because she's not going to want to do that. And then that will feel like pressure to her that she's being pushed into, not non-consensually, right? So this is going to cause a lot of problems. Okay. So listen, guys, not everyone is built to want to lead. Not every guy is built to want to be in charge, and that's okay. All right. The thing is that you can only get with a woman who does like to be in charge. And then once you're there, you can't gripe about not being able to have any decision-making power. So you can't come back and be like, well, I'm a man and because I'm blah, 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 and I get to have a say. Like, no, you've chosen to be the support system, and that's okay. But if you're going to do that, then be that 100%, be that guy. Okay. It's just whatever your role is, whether it's being in charge or being a supporter, be that guy 100%. And don't gripe about your role, because that's resistance and that turns into pressure. Okay. So another one here is the fear of rejection. See, like I said, I didn't really go through this, but the next one here is fear of rejection. Another common stereotype is that men should take the initiative to ask someone out on a date or offer sex. Although this way you may create an impression of the guy who knows what he wants, such an approach can also backfire because it creates a possibility of rejection. So a guy who knows what he wants isn't afraid of rejection because he knows what he wants. This is contradictory thinking here. And then there's a quote here. It says, when you're rejected by someone you like, you may feel like you're generally less desirable or less manly than others. So being accepted by women means that you're more manly? Is that it? So it's no surprise that many men decide to just avoid situations where they can be rejected and never make that first move. So they're retaining their manliness by avoiding confrontation, by avoiding potential loss, by avoiding rejection, by avoiding being in charge. And then they come back and complain that women aren't interested in them. That women's standards are too high, that they're looking for boss dudes who are on top of their shit. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways, man. You can't do it. Okay? You can't veer away from everything that is expected of manhood and then want the things that come from being a good man. Right? If you want the spoils of war, you have to actually be in war. You can't avoid war and then expect the spoils. It doesn't work that way. But this is what these guys are thinking. This is how they're thinking. I want women, but I don't want rejection. Well, you have to get through a lot of women to break yourself of your fear and your need for acceptance and your fear of rejection. Because after you do something long enough, right? Like when I was first learning to ride a bike, I was scared. I remember my first day of when I first like actually rode my bicycle with no assistance, no training wheels, right? And my brother was behind me, and he was like running behind me with the hand on the back seat, and it was one of those old bikes, with like the ape hanger handlebars, and it had this long, sparkly gold banana seat, right? Really long. It was like a bike from like the late 70s, and I remember he was pushing, and then he said, "I'm letting go," and he let go, and I was scared out of my mind. But because that was the first time that I was riding my bicycle unassisted. But I did it. I didn't crash, right? I was wobbly, of course, but the faster I was going, everything sort of steadied out. And it was a great feeling. But it took multiple times, multiple tries to get to that point, to where, I felt comfortable riding my bicycle. I remember the same sort of things like when I was getting into martial arts. Holy shit, the first time I had to go to a tournament to fight, that was one of the scariest things of my life. But you do it again and again and again, and the fear and the discomfort goes down, 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 down. Now, why? And guys do this with so many things in life, tons of things in life. But when it comes to talking to females, it's like that same sort of science just goes out the window. Why? Right? They're not looking for acceptance anywhere else in life. But when it comes to interacting with other people, they're like, "Oh man, I hope I get this right, because if I don't, it means I'm undesirable. And, I'm scared to make that first move, so I'm just going to avoid situations where I could possibly be rejected. But all the same while, I'm going to be really hoping that I'm liked at the same time." Like, what the fuck is that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. If you want to be comfortable with talking to women, talk to a lot of women. And you get good at it. And then it becomes easy. Then it becomes fun. Then it becomes a creative exercise. And next thing you know, you're riffing on it. Right? When I was, learning art, learning music, learning skateboarding, it's like, yeah, you get the basics down. You get fucked up. You skin your knees. You get injured. You make god-awful works of art that you don't want to show to anyone. But then you get good. And you start nailing those foundational concepts. You start getting it down. It starts making sense. It starts clicking. And next thing you know, you can veer away from the foundational aspects of things and start expressing yourself. That's what you need to do with women as well. You need to communicate with a lot of women so that you can express yourself without fear, because fear is the antithesis to expression, right? Like stage fright. So what's going on here saying with the fear of rejection is when you're in a relationship. You may also feel rejected when your partner decides not to come to a party with you or doesn't want to have sex. Quite often, the feeling of rejection turns into resentment. Anger, along with poor communication, are common signs of toxic relationships. Instead of keeping your feelings inside until they become overwhelming, you can try sharing your feelings with your partner. Don't be afraid to appear vulnerable. Acknowledge your feelings, and talking about them takes a lot of inner strength and courage. Okay, fine. If you want to say it takes inner strength and courage to do something that is foolhardy in a relationship, then yes. Is that blind courage? Is that stupid courage? Perhaps. I don't know of any good relationships where the guy is pouring his heart out to his woman. I do not know of any. I don't know any. But I do know guys that I work with who were highly emotive. They were not in charge of their relationships. They expressed their feelings a lot. They were afraid of rejection, and they got divorced. They ruined their relationships. They drove the respect into the ground. Because if someone is a shifty, type of person, like a woman, right? They can shift with each thought, with each feeling, with little bits of stimuli, with the change in the wind and the sun and what day it is and hormones and what they ate that day, and perhaps a song that triggered a memory that made their feelings go this way and that. It's like, to be with someone like that, okay, who's just naturally this way, to then be sided with someone who is sort of like that also, does not promote stability. It does not promote groundedness, right? I talk about that concept a lot, being grounded. Grounded is still, it's stable, it's calm. Yeah, it can be more boring. It's less exciting because it's predictable, okay? But part of what a man is should be predictable. He should be predictable in how he's going to react to certain stimuli. If whatever happens and he flies off the handle and he loses his cool, he loses his temper, or he breaks down crying, and it happens, I mean, maybe he's consistent in that, but he's consistent in showing that he's volatile. And volatility does not promote safety. It does not promote emotional safety, okay? Having a foundation of stillness promotes safety because it can be rested upon, okay? Something wild can rest on something stable, all right? Now, that doesn't mean that's all you have to be, okay? Because if you're just stoic, that's too boring. It doesn't provide positive emotional stimuli, but that's a whole other conversation, okay? All right. What's up? 100% me. Good to see you. Vic Daddy, what's up? I am not him. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. What's up, Boxing? Good to see you, buddy. Vic Daddy here says, I think it's because society made it valuable if a guy has women and put pressure on other guys to do the same thing too. I don't know. It's really possible. I really don't pay attention. I don't pay attention much. God, I don't understand why my camera is so fucking grainy. But anyways, I don't put much stock. I don't listen to a whole lot of what society is saying about men, which is why I was like, oh, let me find something to talk about. And I was like, all right, what do average men deal with in relationships? I have no idea. Like, what's the regular shit, because I live in my own world. So I ventured out into the land, the land of regular dudes. And I was like, all right, let's see what they're talking about here. What's the common shit? And it's like a fear of responsibility, fear of being in charge, fear that they can't express their emotions, fear of rejection, right? Feeling rejected when your partner decides not to come to a party with you. First of all, calling a partner, when your woman decides not to come to a party with you, why do you give a shit? Why do you care that much? Okay. Maybe if it's like, say, something very important where you would like to have your woman there as like representative of you because it shows a certain status to be not single because it's like some sort of work function, and I don't know, there's just like things resting on that. That would make sense, right? But if she's a good woman, she's on your program, you've got good leadership and good influence, she's going to understand the importance of that. Despite her not wanting to go, even if she doesn't feel like going, she's going to be like, I need to be here as a representative of my men. But if it's like just a regular party, like, who gives a fuck? Yeah, girl, stay home. Put your sweatpants on. I'm going to go out, But it's like, I know she'd probably be wondering, like, what's he going to be doing when he's going out? Is he talking to other girls? What's going to be going on? So that's not going to be a good time for her. All right, it's number 3 here, performance anxiety. You guys are so weird, man. You guys are so weird. Like, I feel like I visited from another planet, and looking at the human male and looking at what's going on, what bothers you, what you talk about, what you think about, and I'm truly perplexed. Like, I'm sitting here, I feel like an alien scratching my head and being like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Performance anxiety. What? All right, so let's see what this says. Another common problem is related to intimacy. The stereotypical image of a masculine man implies that men should always want sex and be ready to go at it at any moment. The truth is that it's impossible to want sex constantly. Moreover, hypersexuality can actually be a sign of mental health issues. However, social expectations once again create tremendous pressure. In fact, the pressure can be so overwhelming that men often find themselves unable to perform when it comes to the action. The reason is that the more we think about getting an erection, the less likely we are able to get it. According to statistics, 20% of men with intimacy issues and erectile dysfunction, in particular, don't have any physical problems. This is true. Their problems are rooted in performance anxiety, and problems in bed can also lead to shame, which may only make anxiety stronger. So, performance anxiety. I don't know. Like, if I don't feel like fucking, I'm not gonna fuck. If I feel like fucking, I'm gonna get hard and I'm gonna fuck. I don't want to have sex all the time. And see, like, the pressure, what does it say here? The masculine image, always wanting sex and having to go at any moment. I mean, granted, I'm 46 years old, so I don't have the same sort of need for sex that like a guy in his late 20s has, okay? I've had enough sex in my life where it's like, okay, yeah, it's enjoyable, but it's not like this thing, this like special birthday cake sort of thing, right? It's just sex. So I just don't get that. So it's like, yeah, I guess if guys are worried about, see, this is the thing. If your mind is outside your own head for too long, and it's, you know, the only other choice is to be in the head of others, okay, then you're going to be affected by that because your mind is out there resting in the minds of others. And it's always going to be shifting and changing depending on the time period, the culture, where you are, your age bracket, your socioeconomic status. So all of these things are affecting how you see yourself and how you behave, right? Because I'm always talking about what you believe is what you perceive. And then this in turn affects your behavior. All right. So if you bring in the perceptions of others and that turns into a belief, then that's going to change your behavior. All right. And in this case, it causes performance anxiety and you can't get an erection because your mind is too concerned with what other people think and performing, right? Performance can't exist without an observer. So whenever you're thinking about performance anxiety, it's really having anxiety of what other people think of you. That's where all that shit stems. They're not talking about that. They're not talking about how the man's mind is stuck in the heads of other people, trying to be one step ahead so that they can find acceptance. So they're leaving out layers. I mean, and it even goes deeper than that, but that's a sublayer that is way more important than talking about performance anxiety because that is just a symptom. That's just a symptom, right? Part of the cause is something far deeper. And in order to deal with it, you can't get it in a self-help book. You can't, like, your therapist isn't going to understand that shit. If you're like, yeah, man, I put my head in other people's heads, they're going to be like, so what are the little voices telling you, right? Like, they're going to think you're fucking crazy, but that's actually what's happening. That's really what's happening with guys. Because so they're creating like a fractured identity. That's really what it is. Shit, I'm gonna fucking coin that. A fractured identity amongst the outside, amongst the people, amongst the culture, amongst the government, the media, religion, whatever it is, and your identity becomes fractured so that it gains influences from all these little bits, and then you don't have a you anymore. You're like this amalgamation of tons of different views. And you're trying to meet all these things. So it's like, are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? It's like One of my older videos, I talked about that story that my mother read me when I was a kid. Man, I tell you, the further back in time you go with children's stories, the better and better they get. Because if you go way back when like children's stories first started coming about, they were grim as fuck. Actually, the Brothers Grimm, if you look at like the real Brothers Grimm stories, that was some fucked up shit that was happening in those stories. And it's to scare the wits out of kids to keep their behavior in check. All right. So I was reading books from like the 60s and 70s. All right. So my mother saved a lot of that stuff. And so there's this story, this bear, and this bear, he goes to school, and it was art day. And so he decides to do a portrait of his mother. Very nice, simple portrait. And he's walking home. He's got his painting and his brushes, and like his little case with the brushes and paint in it. And he comes across a friend, and this friend's like, I think it was like Giraffe. And he's like, what do you think of my picture? And Giraffe's like, it's great, but the neck is too short. And he's like, hold on a second. Let me fix that for you. And he puts a long neck on it. And he's like, how's this? And Giraffe is like, that's awesome. I love it now. And the bear is happy, and then he moves along his way. He comes across Crocodile. Crocodile says the teeth are too small, so he puts this big toothy grin. Rabbit says the ears are too small, so he puts giant rabbit ears on there. Elephant says the nose is too small, so he puts a big trunk on there. You get the idea, okay? By the time he gets home, his painting looks like a chimera. Okay, and if you don't know what a chimera is, it's from Greek mythology, and it was a mythological beast composed of like 10 different creatures. Right? It did not look cool. I mean, well, some people think it looks cool, but it looked like a mess. Okay, that's what his painting looked like, and he shows it to his mother, and she was like clutching her pearls, with this look on her face, like gasping, like, "What the fuck? This is what you think I look like?" And the lesson there is, by listening to everyone else, he created a monstrosity. And this is the plague that so many males face, that they've allowed to happen in their lives. And this is the sort of thing that creates performance anxiety, because you're constantly thinking about performing. The bear was performing. He should have said, fuck you guys, the painting's awesome. Or not even bother showing it to anyone, because it wasn't intended for them. It was intended for his mother. So he just should have said, hey, how's it going, Crocodile? Have a nice day. Right? Good to see you, man. And just kept it moving. But instead, he asked for their opinions and their input. And then he even followed their opinions and input. So he fucked up. All right? So the same thing is happening with men's minds. Okay? Male minds. Sorry for the blasphemous use of the word, the blaspheme around men. They're males. So, and so if you're worried about all that stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, she's not going to think I'm a man because I'm not getting hard. It's like, yeah, you're worrying about what the fuck she thinks, because what she thinks is more important to you. And that's going to affect so many other things. If you're worried about her perceptions of you and trying to live up to that. If she's unhappy, she's unhappy. It's not your fucking job, okay? Now, if you did something fucked up and it was purposeful, or you're just being, you made a poor decision and she ends up getting hurt in some way, sure, take responsibility for that. But if it's just you as you living your life and she's upset, hey, shit happens, okay? Shit happens. My life isn't perfect. Your lives aren't perfect. Things happen. You're like, fuck, I was not wanting it to be that way. Do you blame the world? You blame this? You blame that? No. It's just, this is what's happening. And in a few moments, something else will be happening. And in 3 years, I'm not even going to remember this moment. So why the fuck do I care about it now? It's kind of like that Buddhist koan. I love koans. I was talking to this one guy who was interested in Buddhism, and he was talking about wanting to get into it, and so I recommended him a book, and we were talking about koans. And so there's two schools of Zen. Okay, so there's the Rinzai school and there's a Soto school. All right. The Soto school, Soto, these are from Japan, and the Soto means just sitting. So the practice of just being still, sitting on a cushion, not saying anything, and just silent meditation for a long ass time, that's that's Soto, right? That's the Soto Buddhism. The Rinzai school, that was about, like, they're the ones that have like the riddles and the brain teasers and that sort of shit that kind of like tricked your brain into, doing things to create what they called satori, which was brief instantaneous enlightenment, okay, to make you have these aha moments about your own existence. All right. So there's this one koan about, and you might have heard it before, so bear with me, about these two monks, like an older monk and a younger monk, and they're coming up to the stream, and on the other side there's this like well-to-do woman, and she's got extremely expensive silk robes on, and she can't cross the stream, okay? And she's like, hey, you guys over here, help me cross this stream. Like, she's being like a total bitch, right? And without a second thought, the old monk, he rolls up his pants, traipses across the stream, puts her on his back, trucks her right across the stream, sets her down with a smile, and, bids her a good day. The young monk and old monk go walking off in another direction, and an hour later, the young monk, he's just like gritting his teeth. He's like, Master, I can't keep this inside anymore. I have to talk about this. Why did you help that woman? She was so rude. She was such a cantankerous bitch. Like, why would you possibly help her? And the old monk looks at him and says, I put that woman down an hour ago. Why are you still carrying her? And it's like that sort of stuff, right? Where it makes your brain go and tweak a little to help you think things in it from a slightly different angle. So that's the Rinzai school. And I don't remember why I was bringing up the fucking Buddhism and the Rinzai school and the Soto school. But if you're interested in Buddhism, it's full of interesting brain teasers like that. But moving on here. So the fourth thing here is hiding mental health issues from a partner. Mutual trust is one of the main differences between healthy and unhealthy relationships. Although talking to your partner about your mental health means that you will likely feel vulnerable, it's important to understand that you won't be able to hide your issues from them forever. Okay, your man is not your therapist. Your woman is not your therapist. There's no reason why you should be revealing your issues to the person that you're with. They're not fucking qualified. It's not their job. So don't bring your shit to your woman, and don't bring your shit to your man. If you've got a lot of issues, go talk to a professional. All right? If you only have like a little bit of issues, maybe just talk to a friend that's smarter than you. Okay? But don't bring your fucking trash to the relationship and dump it on the floor and go, well, this is me. This is what I'm working with, and I wanted to be honest and transparent and vulnerable, and now you have to deal with it. They're gonna be like, what the fuck, But if you know that there's some shit going on that, and if you've got a little bit of wisdom yourself and thinking, I could step back and go, maybe how I'm behaving isn't exactly conducive to a healthy relationship. Maybe I should talk to somebody, not my woman. I mean, you can tell your woman, hey, I'm going to go talk to somebody. That's fine. But the context, like what's being talked about, that's not their business. So it goes on to say, they will notice that there's something wrong with you sooner or later. Besides, if you try to hide your inner struggles from someone who is always by your side, you may start to experience new symptoms and develop anxiety, depression, or other mental disorders. For instance, many men hide their emotional issues and vulnerabilities behind aggression, blaming others for their unpleasant feelings. Do you ask yourself, am I the problem in my relationship? When people experience symptoms of depression or other mental health disorders, they often feel like there's something wrong with them, and their self-esteem may suffer. The truth is that everyone can face such problems. When struggling with emotional issues, men often simply distract themselves with work, drugs, alcohol, or affairs. I would say that last line is quite true, right? But that doesn't have to do with having emotional issues. What they're struggling with is taking responsibility for their issues. If you can't personally hack your own brain, then go to a therapist. All right? That's taking responsibility, whether you're doing it or someone else is helping you. If you don't, then yeah, that's going to be displaced and you're going to go headfirst into your work. You're going to do drugs, you're going to do alcohol, or you're going to cheat on your woman. All right? And all those things are fucked up. But this line here, thinking, am I the problem in my relationship? When people experience symptoms of depression or other mental health disorders, they often feel like there's something wrong with them and their self-esteem may suffer. That's part of the problem, is when you think you're not the problem. Okay? Like, with my dude earlier today, we were talking about divorces because he had a divorce like many years ago. And yes, while it is true that women leave most relationships, women are the cause of most breakups, or not the cause, but they're the ones who initiate the breakups, and they're the ones who initiate the divorces for the most part. Now, this is not a cause. So guys will get hurt and go, oh, look, she's the one that broke it off. She did the thing. And yes, while that is true, her action is a response. We don't leave jobs that are great, okay? We don't check out early from awesome hotels. We don't leave early from movies that are amazing. We don't get up and not want to pay the bill on an amazing dinner, okay? We leave movies that suck, all right? We stop going to a restaurant that has poor service and we just want to pay our bill and get the fuck out of there, okay? We leave things that are distasteful, okay, that aren't serving us, that aren't promoting us, that aren't helping us grow, that aren't doing any good for us. All right. So yes, while it's true that women initiate breakups and divorces more often than men do, and I think that's just because men are, for the most part, they're a bunch of pussies when it comes to that sort of thing. But that's a whole other thing. But that's attached, right? It's attached to their fear of rejection, fear of responsibility, fear of being in charge, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So yes, if someone's afraid of being in charge and afraid of rejection, of course they're not going to initiate a breakup because they don't have nothing to stand on. They're still afraid. They want to make sure that she likes him so much. Okay. Above all else. So yes, women, they initiate breakups and divorces more often, but it's a response to the man that she's with. That's what it is. If she doesn't like him, now it doesn't mean that he's fucked up. Sometimes he might be. And I would say for the vast majority of guys, yes, he's fucked up because they don't have any principles. They don't have codes. They don't have rules. They don't live on a constitution. They have no compass, no square, no axe, no hatchet. They have nothing. They just roll by the seat of their pants. Okay? Now you're asking them to be more emotive. Okay, so you have a guy who has no square and no program, and he's expected to be emotive, and you're giving him the choice to not be in charge. This is a recipe for disaster. And you wonder why women leave relationships. You wonder why women can just break off a marriage like that. Because this is what's happening to guys. This is what's happens to guys, right? Because there was a divorce like epidemic. I think it started in the 80s, right? That's when this like huge divorce trend started happening. I'd have to do some research on that, but again, I don't think a lot about other people's lives. Not a whole lot. All right. I mean, unless you're paying me for it, then I'm in it 100%. So yeah, I just don't get all this shit. I feel like an alien. I feel like an alien visiting this planet, and I don't understand. Because it's like, women aren't going to leave a good thing. If it makes them feel good, and they like the sex, they enjoy how they feel about themselves when spending time with you, they're going to be less apt to break it off. They're not going to want to leave because it's seen as valuable, because the way they feel good. Why would you leave something that you feel good at? Even we don't do that as men. We don't just bounce out of situations or jobs or events or whatever because we feel good. We bounce because we feel bad. We're at a concert and the music sucks, right? Or the crowd is awful or whatever. You're just like, I'm out of here. I don't give a fuck, because it is just not providing any good, positive results. So, but yeah, this was, what they... Oh, all right. So let's read this last part here. Being a man shouldn't be that difficult. Both men and women have to deal with many gender stereotypes. You may feel like you're supposed to play a role that has been written for you by someone else. However, nobody can tell you what to feel and what relationships to build. All relationships are unique, and only you and your partner can decide what your relationship will look like. Healthy relationships are impossible without trust and honesty. Acknowledging your vulnerabilities doesn't make you weak. It takes a lot of courage for a man to recognize his struggles, especially when it comes to relationships and mental health. So this is, a promoting therapy. So of course they're going to be talking about this stuff, right? Because at the bottom it says like therapy offers a way to better understand yourself and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, and I'm not shooting down therapy. Like it's very helpful for a lot of people. It's just, of course, they're talking about this sort of thing because it feeds their bottom line. So of course they're going to be going towards these things, but it's like, nobody can tell you what to feel and what relationships to build. All of them are unique, and only you and your partner can decide what your relationship will look like. Democratic things take forever. They take forever. I don't know if any of you have been part of a committee or part of a team where like everybody gets a say. All right. So many years ago, I'm an illustrator, and many years ago I worked at a video game company here in New York, and I was doing pre-production artwork for this skateboarding game. All right. And there was a creative team. And of course, there's like the art director who gets to make the final say on stuff, but he was a little bit of a wet towel. Okay, so he wasn't a very decisive person. So it was up to I was a concept artist at the time. It was me, two other concept artists, some 3D guys, and we would get together. And the AD would kind of like weigh in a little bit, but he wouldn't say, "Okay, this is what we're going with." Okay, and it took forever to come up with decisions because from all of our vantage points, we all felt like we had good input. Okay. And maybe we did, but you can't put all the ingredients in the cake. It just doesn't work that way. You need the right things to make it so it's a viable product that can be built and sold well. Okay. And that's where the art director comes in. He says, no, this is what we're doing. Right. And says, I like that idea. That will work. I like that idea. I like that idea. That sucks. That's not good. But maybe for, another time, whatever, this is what we're working with. That's how things move forward, right? With consideration and then making a choice. When you have a situation where you got partners who are deciding what your relationship will look like, that's when things take forever. I'm not saying that leads to failure, okay? But I could guarantee that things will take a hell of a lot longer to move forward. And if you are the type who is decisive, if you're not afraid of being in charge, if you don't have any fear of rejection, okay, if being in the position of a man doesn't feel like a burden, working with your partner to decide what the relationship is going to look like between the two of you, that's going to feel like pressure. That's going to feel like a hassle. That's going to feel like it's just slowly rolling. Like, if you've ever been in like an automatic, like a car with like an automatic transmission, and if you don't put your feet on the pedals, it will have, I forget what it's called, but like the drivetrain just has an automatic roll to it, and it'll just slowly move the vehicle without any inputs from the gas pedal. That's what it's like. And this will drive men like this insane. Okay. If you are more emotive, if you're democratic, if you're into listening to all points of view before making an informed decision and this and that and the other, yeah, like be that guy, okay? But I have the feeling that if the woman is also this way, it's going to be it's going to become frustrating for her. That's my assessment on that. All right. Okay, just checking your comments here. Yeah, Uncle Guns, man, I've had to do that before. I've had to leave bad movies, bad concerts, bad restaurants. You know, and it's like if you're afraid of hurting feelings, if you're afraid of coming off wrong to other people, which means again your mind is fractured amongst others, then behaving this way, it's gonna be difficult. It's if your identity is fractured, it's gonna be really difficult to it's gonna be really difficult to move, and you're not gonna be happy. You're absolutely not, because in order to be happy, you have to know what you want. You have to be able to move according to what you want. And so if you're constantly worried about what other people are doing, so that basically waiting for permission, then you're never going to really get at what you want, because you're waiting for them to give you the okay, just so you can blink and breathe and think and behave and eat and have hobbies. And it's like, that's why I like the kink community so much, because for the most part, they're just like, I don't give a fuck what you think. Like, yeah, okay, so I like lubing up my toes and sticking them in people's ass, like, and that's their thing. They don't give a fuck what you think about it. All right. But that's what makes them happy. Okay. As long as it's consensual, nobody gets hurt, like whatever, And so I like that. That's why part of the reason why I like that community, because of the self-honesty and not really giving a shit what other people think of your preferences, your ideas, what you want out of life, Yeah. And that's, and that's really just what separates you. And then when you stay in that for that long, like I said, like I don't venture out. This is the first time I've ventured out onto the internet to think about like what the masses of men are experiencing and what they're thinking. And it's such a bizarre sensation. It's like going into a neighborhood they've never been in before. And, the trees' leaves are blue instead of green. And, the grass is orange. And you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like people have fences on top of their house and dirt where the fence should be. And you're like, what the fuck is going on with this place? Like it kind of looks like recognizable, but things are like out of place. It's kind of like, where did I go? Was it? No, it wasn't Martha's Vineyard. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was Martha's Vineyard, but I got there and I felt like I was transported into this alternate dimension where Martha Stewart was the mayor. And it was like every house was these gorgeous homes that looked like they were straight out of that magazine called Country Living. And they were like perfect. Like they were manicured to be just in case a photographer for that magazine were to like walk by. And they all had like these giant blooming flower bushes in front of their house. Everything was white, like white and pink. And like, that's the colors of like the whole area. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I feel like I'm in this like Stepford Wife, weird alternate dimension. And that's a sensation that I got when I was looking out into the world of regular men, because it's been so long since I could relate to that kind of thinking. A very long time. And, so the longer you stay with yourself, the longer you stay with your program, with your own codes, with your own beliefs, and trusting yourself, trusting your own judgment, you kind of can take a glance, or you talk to somebody from, that other dimension, And it makes you realize like how different things actually are, how different things are for you, and the hell that guys must be living in. And that's why I do the work that I do, because yeah, part of me has compassion. I don't have a completely cold heart when like fuck everybody. You know, I do have compassion for guys who can see it, they're unhappy, and they want to do something about it, you know. That said, I redid the website, thedominanceacademy.com. Check it out. I'm really, really happy with how it's been received. So, you know, it's cool. It's an interesting experiment, but it seems to be doing well. So, you know, I'm gonna just keep uploading stuff on there as it grows and provide more and more valuable content. So, you know, for you guys that are, you know, on the path to creating your own world, your own reality based on your identity, you're gonna find yourself separated more and more. And the only other people you can actually commiserate with are other aliens. And you might not all be from the same dimension, but at least you're not from Earth, right? So that's like something in common that you share. And you know, and you're like, hey, like how are things on Vox, on Planet Vox? Like, you know, you get like, yeah, well, it's not like this fucking crazy shit, you know. But that's what's gonna happen, and you're gonna find the world and the people in it more and more unrelatable. And you know, at first, you know, if you're kind of making that transition, it's gonna start to feel like it'll feel weird at first. And, you know, that'll be part of your transition. All right. That you just have to get used to. Shaker27, thank you for coming through. For someone starting a code, do I start with one or two things and slowly build? The website looks awesome. And hey, thanks, Shaker. I appreciate that. No, code building is a process. Okay, so there's all right. So if I could just break it down, I mean, there's a process that I use to help facilitate guys understanding how to build their codes, how to build their principles and their rules. Okay, so I'm not going to give you the architecture for that. That's something that's paid for, because that takes a lot of my time. But just to give you an idea, okay, of the basic structure, codes are overarching large concepts. Okay, it's more like worldviews. Okay, so an example of a code that one would live by would be like bravery, honesty, integrity, courage, you know, like just these like larger than life sort of concepts. Okay, and they're not all the same for guys. You know, like not every man is going to believe in integrity. Okay. Or whatever, and that's him, right? That's in his fucking dimension. Integrity doesn't exist. It's not important. Okay, or maybe it's there, but it's like lower on the list. So codes are large overarching concepts. Okay, think of it as like the planetary level. All right, principles are more on the continent level. All right, we're dealing nations or continents. Okay, principles are bodies of behavioral rules, so to speak. Okay, so religions, they operate on the principle level. Okay, they don't really talk much about codes, they talk a lot about principles. So principles are guidelines for human behavior. So if you look at, say, the 10 commandments, and there's a lot more commandments than 10. Okay, if you didn't know that, there's like well over 100. All right, so the commandments are principles. Okay, all that thou shalt not stuff, those are principles. The Buddhist Eightfold Path, okay, it's very similar. They're just lists of, right? So they talk about like right mind, right speech, right meditation, right livelihood, and there's 8 of them. Those are principles. So the principles that you know have for yourself, those are guidelines for your behavior, what you find acceptable and what you find unacceptable. Okay, now I'm of the side of positive reinforcement, so I don't like thou shalt not. Okay, so if you say, if like say a principle of yours is thou shalt not lie, just say I always speak the truth. You see how that works? So I think it's just better. It's more powerful, especially if you're reading them at like a regular rate to try to like get it into your system. You want to have them as positive statements, positive affirmations, things that affirm something, okay, instead of denying something. And rules are the small bits, okay, the small bits of everyday life. Okay, so for example, one of my rules is always pushing in your chair. All right. I tell my kids, I tell my woman, I tell myself, push in your chair, whether I'm at home, whether I'm at a restaurant, whether I'm at someone else's house, always push in your damn chair after you leave a table. All right. It's just, I don't care if it's a fucking greasy spoon diner, you push in your chair. It just, it looks better. It just shows, it's sort of like a silent thank you. All right. And for some reason, I don't know, it's important. It grinds my teeth when I see somebody get up from a meal and they just kind of walk off like, it's just courtesy, like slide the chair in. It just, it's like I said, it's like a silent thank you. So that's one of my rules. Okay. And you figure out your rules. This is like a little hint. You figure out your rules by paying attention to what gets under your skin. So I realized like that got under my skin. So that was an indication to me. It's like, that's a rule of mine. Right. And so little things that get under your skin, you can pay attention to them, and that will perhaps lead you to a rule. That doesn't always lead you to a rule, but there's a very good chance that there's a rule hiding in there with your, getting annoyed with a certain something. Okay. So that's the like codes, principles, and rules, and how they separate from one another, so you can understand. And no, you don't start with one or two things. This is the sort of thing that can take weeks to produce. Okay. Weeks of study, weeks of research, weeks of understanding. And it takes a lot of time, the Constitution of the United States, it took how long did that take? Did it take 5 years? Let's see. How long did the Constitution take to write? Okay, so they started it from May 25th to September 17th, 1787. So May, June, July, August, September. Okay, so 4 months. It took 4 months to write one document. Okay, because they had other guys in there. They were kicking around a lot of ideas, probably getting into arguments, and really like wrestling with really important concepts, because it's fucking important. All right. And when you're writing your own constitution, and when you're creating your CPRs, which what I call them, it's really important. And it's not something that can be rushed so you can say, I've got a fucking constitution. No, it's so important that you don't want to rush to that. You don't want to rush to that point. You want to take your time, because the Constitution and your CPRs, that's the thing that creates the foundation for everything else to come off of that. All right. So it's like, you want to make sure that that's solid and understood, and that's based off of true beliefs, true understanding. All right. That's why it's so important. Okay. And they didn't rush through it. They took 4 months to, Uncle Gunn says George Mason took years and multiple drafts. So it's not something that can easily be sorted out right away. And because you're trying to build, okay? You got to get out of this modern concept of instant gratification, so you can say you've got something. All right? That's not how this works, okay? Delayed gratification. Not measure twice, cut once. It's like measure 12 times and cut once. when it comes to this. Okay. So if you have any other questions, pop them in the chat. I'll probably just go for a few more minutes. It's funny because it's like all these things are linked together. The what we were talking about before with the anxiety, the ease of depression, having emotional problems, fearing rejection, fearing responsibility, fearing of being in charge, mixed in with what I mentioned before, the fractured identity, considering what people think, wanting instant gratification. All of this stuff it's a gooey mess. It's a gooey mess. And that like it's wanting to have these things solved like super quickly. And that's another thing these guys have. They want that instant. They want that instant gratification. They want to, how do I be a man? And that's how a lot of them get fucking fooled by many of the coaches that are out there, okay, that are selling snake oil. Like, I literally on my site say, this is going to take at least 12 months. And I've worked with guys for even longer, sometimes a little less, but it's, generally like 8 to 13 months for on average. Because there's a lot there. Like, you think like it's just simple. Like, all right, I want this, I want this, I want this. Okay, cool. Your desires are simple. Okay. But the pathway of getting there, because there's a lot of reverse engineering that has to happen, both with your planning and the ingredients that you have already, that most of you didn't even put there. You absorbed from outside sources. You didn't even choose to think how you're thinking. Because it's been adopted. It's been adopted by culture, by your parents, by religion, by politics, by media, all sorts of shit, okay? And a lot of it you did not decide to keep. It was massaged into your mind over many years. So you got to take time to undo some of that stuff, or at least examine it to the point where you can say, okay, I want to get rid of that belief. I want to keep that belief. And so on. That takes time. It takes a lot of introspection. It takes being challenged to look by someone else who can see you better than you can see you. Okay? Because there's very few people who can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. It can be done, okay? Absolutely. There's been periods in my life where I've had to do that, but it makes things so much easier. I mean, it's more painful because it's faster, but by having someone there that can pull you up for you, okay, or show you how to pull yourself, or a combination of those things, it's more efficient. But it's like these guys, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen who they're the ones saying, get your ex back by learning this one secret tip. Okay. It's like, and guys who are needy, they'll hear that. Okay. Or like, learn how to pick up any woman with these 3 simple hacks. Okay. It's like, I don't know what it is. Like you earthlings suck that shit up like fucking chocolate milkshakes. I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. Where you're like, oh, yeah, really? Like there's a fast, cheap, and easy way to get what I want? Okay. I'm on it. Here, take my money. Okay? And I don't even know what these guys are teaching, but I can tell you damn sure that there are no 3 secret hacks to pick up any woman that you want. It doesn't exist. Okay? It's a large process that has everything to do with your relationship to yourself. And that is a process. It's a long fucking process. And, some people it takes months, some people it takes years. But it is something that there's no shortcuts. There's no, there's no God mode. There's no cheat codes. You just have to fucking get in there. Okay. Now, the great part is that when you are working, okay, and I don't mean your job, I mean when you're working with yourself, all right, you get out what you put in. It's at a 1-to-1 ratio, all right? So if you slack, you're going to get just a little bit. If you really take it seriously, you'll get out a lot, all right? And that might result in things changing faster, okay? Now, every mind is different. Every mind adapts at a different rate, okay? So what you could be busting your ass, but because your mind is just the way it is, okay, perhaps it's not adapting quite as quickly as you would like. And that's the way the fucking cookie crumbles, you know? And other guys, they adapt very quickly and it just clicks for them. And that's what it is for them, all right? But, if you're trying to do this shit all by yourself, it's a long process, you know? Before I hired my first coach, I was working on myself for 8 years on my own. And, but I'm naturally an introspective kind of person. And I think through my history with Buddhism and dealing with certain types of teachers that would poke and punch and scratch my ego, I was used to that sort of punishment, I guess. It's not really punishment, but that sort of experience, all right, of having my ego kicked around. And so I think that when I was putting myself through the gamut, and also being introspective, I was able to kind of learn through my own behaviors and my own choices and my own mistakes. And then once I got a teacher, then I was able to see things that I couldn't see, right? And that's when when I was really like pouring, octane booster in the gasoline tank. But yeah, I would just say watch out for anyone who is selling a quick scheme, anyone who's selling a shortcut, anyone who's selling, something that like that old adage, right? Like if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. Okay. And it's like, just watch out for that shit. All right, Uncle Guns here says, thank you. It says, get coaching. Coach will give you training. Training teaches you what and how practice. Professionals do it until they get it right. Experts practice until they can't get it wrong. Yeah, that's a great statement. And, because there's always somebody who knows more than you. Always. Like, you got like top CEOs who are making crazy money hand over fist. They still have gurus that they go to. They still have teachers. They still have mentors. And, because you can't know everything. As good as you are, you can't know everything. And that's just the way it goes. Every master has a master. And that's just the way it goes. What's up, Zormina? Good to see you here. It says, your culture shock reminds me of my first time walking through the red light district when I was 20. The red light district where? Because there's a number of them. You talk about in Europe or a different red light district. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of red light districts. I think there was used to be out in California, but where am I thinking? Copenhagen, Denmark. What's that one place in Europe where all the drugs are free to use? Amsterdam. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Amsterdam. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Amsterdam's a beautiful place. Like the architecture is one of my favorite places for architecture. Really, really nice there. A lot of places in Europe. Brian the Man, good to see you, man. So yeah, just it's all about awareness. It's all about waking up to yourself. And you can't do that if your mind is other places. You can't do that if you're avoiding pain and discomfort. Okay? You have to move towards pain. You have to move towards discomfort. That's how you grow. And that's in all aspects. That's in so many aspects of life. Okay? Like you want your business to grow, you got to work harder in certain areas. You want your muscles to grow, you have to actually tear the muscles on a microscopic level. It has to hurt them, and then they grow. You want to deal with your emotional issues, you have to come at them head on. It's gonna suck, and then it won't suck. Okay? Like, I'm sure, like, when a chick is hatching out of an egg, that's not easy, right? Their body's all fucking scrunched in there and, trying to peck out of there. It's most likely uncomfortable. So in the areas of your life, where you're feeling discomfort, pain, you want to avoid something, make note of these things. You should always be making note of how your mind is reacting. Okay? Be aware of those things. You know how I mentioned before of being 12 inches back and 12 inches up as a position, as a man in a relationship. Okay? So you're there, but you're not there. You're involved, but you're not involved. You're not sunk in. Okay? This is what allows you to hear the symphony, but not listen. Okay? You also have to be 12 inches back and 12 inches up from your own mind. Right? You have to be able to observe how certain things are functioning instead of always being in it. Okay. Now, of course, you can't always be this way. Okay. Be like detached from your mind, observing your mind. You can't live this way. But, during more relaxed times where you're not having to fucking drive a forklift or whatever, because that could be dangerous, have moments where you are able to observe. Okay. Meditation is a good practice to learn this skill. Okay. Like I was mentioning, the Soto schools, really it's just sitting and observing your mind. And when it like runs away, you don't like go with it. Okay. You just observe it running away, and then you bring your attention back to your breathing. And that's all that they did. That's all they did was just focus on their breathing. And then eventually, they call it the monkey mind, right? The monkey mind would start getting wild and start jumping over here and jumping over there and fucking with shit and, making you think with this and making you think of that and worry and this and that and whatever. And then it's like, oh, that monkey is fucking around again. Okay. That's the 12 inches back. Like, you can see it happening and you're like, okay, I'll forget it. And you bring your awareness back to your breathing. Okay. And you get used to this. I have my guys start a meditation practice. So like every morning they start with just a couple of minutes and they work their way up to 20 minutes right when they wake up. Okay. Because the reason being that is that when you first wake up, your brain waves haven't fully reached an alpha state. Okay. Alpha is like I believe that's the alpha state where you're at full awareness. Okay. You're still in like this halfway sleepy, relaxed minds. Like you're not fully geared up and thinking about all this shit. So that's a really good opportune time to meditate, even if it's just for like a couple minutes, because the monkey's sleepy. The monkey's not thinking about shit. Okay. You can easily tell the monkey, hey, well, we're going to be thinking about that shit in 10 minutes. Okay. So just go back to sleep. All right. And you can more easily meditate. So if you're going to pick up a meditation practice, it's not hard. And it's a lot easier if you do it right when you wake up, just for a couple minutes and just get used to it. And after a while, you'll notice a change. You'll notice your ability to be detached, but involved at the same time. You'll be able to observe your minds reacting in certain ways, which will more easily allow you to follow the pathway of its reaction and understand where those reactions are coming from. Instead of doing what these regular guys do, these earthlings, where they'll complain about what they think is stimulating these problems. Okay, so they stay outside, they stay on the surface, they stay where they think the stimulus is coming from. And it's very difficult for them to to reverse engineer it all the way back. Okay. But if you've conditioned your mind to be just a little bit detached, then you have a much easier time figuring things out. Okay. It's like you've ever been like in a discussion with somebody or an argument with someone, and they're fully in their feelings, they're fully in their feelings. It's really hard to get things across. It's really hard to get things across to them because, they're in it. They're in their emotions. Okay. And that's their perceptions are altered by that. Their judgments are altered by that. The way they're speaking, the way they're thinking. No matter how reasonable your words are, or whatever idea you're trying to convey to them, no matter how reasonable it is, it will have a very difficult time getting it because they're in their emotions. Okay. So in the same way, in the same respect, it's difficult to do what I'm talking about until you have that ability to kind of separate a little bit from your own mind. And that's what allows you to actually do these things, like the work, because if you're so attached into yourself, into your own mind, into your beliefs, into your feelings, and you're enmeshed, it's going to be really difficult to move within that. Okay. Because it's all attached, it's all woven in. So it's much better if you start creating the habits to be able to detach, because then it gives you room to do stuff. It gives you a little bit of elbow room to work. All right. And meditation is a great way to start that practice of being able to observe your mind and work from it. Okay. Instead of working in it. All right. So yeah, I think that's the end of my critique of these earthling males and their shit going on here with these their relationship problems. It's a wild thing what these guys are talking about. The same sort of stuff. Yeah, like I looked on calmary.com, same shit. Men's Health. 4 common relationship problems. Again, they said fear of rejection, hiding depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues from their partner, pressure to be the financial provider, performance anxiety around sex. Like those are Men's Health, like top 4, but yeah, these guys, man, 8 common things. How to communicate with their partner positively. The pressure they feel to solve problems. Really? The pressure. Right. Wait, this is funny. Years ago when a baby shrink, okay, I guess like a new therapist, I was treating a woman in her 40s for depression. As my brain was cramping, trying to see some light in the very bleak picture, she stopped me. Stop being such a man. You're trying too hard to fix things. That's what the patient said to the doctor. It was good counsel. Men don't like unresolved issues in relationships. We quickly become fixers, but that often makes us crappy listeners. Your man will settle down and be much more helpful if you ask him for what you really need. Don't fix, listen. That's actually really good advice, but I think you shouldn't be afraid to or feel pressure to solve problems, okay? And I think what this talk about, like when a woman is like flipping out and she's having some sort of emotional distress, oftentimes guys, they're not trying to fix it for her sake. They're trying to fix it for his sake because he's afraid of conflict. He's afraid of rejection. He's afraid of being in the position of, what do I do with this shit? I don't know, And it's like, all you gotta do is just settle down. Just relax, man, relax. All right. And just let her go. Okay. Let go of trying to control whatever it is that's flowing out of her. Okay. And then you can come back and say, I've got some thoughts about that on how to solve it. Would you like to hear? Right. You can offer a solution. Okay. and there's no more pressure. Number 3 is the things they usually keep locked away. Okay. Some sessions with men are a masterclass in wall building, tall, strong, fortified, drone patrolled. When men let me slip past the wall, I'm often struck by the sweetness and richness they keep deep in their past, their struggle to be cool in 7th grade, the bigness of their ambitions and fears. But this is just this weird stuff, man. Their desire to sometimes be put to work. So men yes. All right. So I do think that men generally like to be helpful. Okay. But stupid men are helpful to too many people, right? They readily give themselves, and this is actually a symptom of nice guy syndrome. Okay. If you haven't read it yet, pick up Dr. Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's not about how to be a dick. It's actually how to not be a nice guy. And one of the symptoms of nice guy syndrome is always being the dude who's ready to help others. Okay. Because while they're being put in the position of service, they are not being rejected. They're being accepted for utility. Okay. But that's still acceptance. All right. For a weak guy, that's still being accepted. Okay. So if you have that neediness, of course, you're going to want to be put to work because, so while this is true in the sense that I do think that men just naturally are builders, creators, supporters, they like to do shit. Okay. There's different motivations for that. So be mindful of that. Sex and orgasms, depression, angst about dating. The fuck? Okay, I might get thrown out of my man club and secret therapist societies, but it's true. Playing the field, dating around, not looking for something serious, that's all BS. Every man wants something serious. A partner that'll love them, guide them, tolerate them, and better them. Love them. Okay. All right, you earthling males are so fucking weird. So she's saying that earthling males are looking for love, they're looking for guidance, they're looking to be tolerated, and they're looking to be made better. That's weird shit. That is really weird shit. Now, listen, if you don't want to date around, you don't have to date around, okay? I think she's right where there's only a few guys of the population who just really love playing the field. They just love that popping action. You know what I mean? People who are in the club scene and this sort of thing or whatever, that's fine. Okay. I do think that most guys, they want just a regular monogamous relationship and they thrive in that. And that's okay too, right? There's no judgment around what you want. The problem is thinking that you should do something that you actually don't want to do. All right. So if you just want a relationship, you want to get married, stand on that shit, defend it. Okay. But that's weird. Wanting to be loved, guided, tolerated, and bettered by women. Interesting. Most men dating around look at me sheepishly when they're seeing multiple women at once because they're afraid of judgment. They thought they were living the dream, but between fear of mixing up names, that's just poor leadership and not having a program, and the anxiety that someone is getting attached, again, not having a good program, it's not as much fun as they thought. Okay. So that's someone who gets, that's like macking on accident where they end up in a situation that they're not equipped for. Okay. Yes. If you're going to see multiple women and this is something you want to do, if you don't want problems in your life, you need to be equipped for it. All right. And I know what to do. I've been there. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I don't like it. But there are people, I know Lucario would be an excellent person to teach you how, if that is something that you really want to do. It's not something I like, so it's not something I teach. I can teach it, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. To me, it's a fucking headache. So their desire, another one here, their desire to be a man. So hard to say. Masculinity is wrapped up with so much baggage, but at our core, being a man means being needed as a man. I was recently feeling super manly, not in front of my grill or hustling on the court with the fellas. Nope. I was in a minivan, driving home. My wife and kids all nodded off, my brood. The road stretched out in front of us, and as I told my shrink a few days later, I felt deep contentment of manhood. Yeah, that's fine, right? So I get that. We're like, you've got your little tribe that you created, right? You got your woman, you got your kids, you got your vehicle, and you're the only one who's awake, and their lives are in your hands. Okay, like that's, I can understand that. Like that's a good feeling. All right, but it's like, you know, I don't know what this person knows about like at their core, right? Because they're saying like being a man means being needed as a man. Okay, what? So if you're on a deserted island, you're no longer a man? Fuck that. No, it's not defined by the outside. It's not defined. They're not interrelated. So yeah, this is just some weird shit. So if you want to see some weird shit, just Google common relationship problems for men. And you're going to see some really bizarre things. Really bizarre things. 3 biggest relationship issues for men. Let's just see what this last one is here. All right. Number 1, what does it say? I guess they didn't. Overcoming communication challenges, expressing emotions, balancing autonomy and togetherness. What the fuck? I just don't understand. All this stuff goes away when you fucking stop, like, when you stop fracturing your identity, when you stop fucking thinking about what other people are thinking, essentially. Get to know yourself better. Lean into fear. Lean into discomfort. Figure out your fucking constitution. Figure out your CPRs. Start taking better care of yourself. Like, really give a shit about yourself. All of that stuff goes away. All of it. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. And developing your program. Okay? All of that stuff goes away. All of it. So, okay, I'm going to bounce out of here. Yes, exactly, Uncle Guns. Male advice magazines are as bad as Cosmopolitan. Yeah, it's just, it's blind sheep leading blind sheep. It's so fucking bizarre, you know? But like, you know, guys like us, we can't write periodicals. We can't write magazines like this stuff because it is so far against the you know, the regular narrative, okay, that it wouldn't survive. And frankly, I like not being noticed, right? Of course, I want to grow my channel, but it's going to be within my little pocket of the internet, okay? I don't want to become a household name, right? I think one of the stupidest things that, what the fuck's his name? Andrew Tate did was he became a household name. That's one of the dumbest things in the world, okay? Like, yes, it garners more attention and more money, sure, okay? And if you're willing to say fuck it and, you know, and that's the cost you're willing to take, fine, all right? But I like operating under the radar. I don't want the man knowing who I am and what I'm doing, all right? Because that limits my freedom, okay? That limits what I can say, what I can do, how I can, you know, that, because once they see you, it's like now they can start putting their influence on you. Okay. So there's so few of us though, that, you know, the system, the man, the matrix, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, they don't pay attention to us because we're not really a threat because our numbers aren't very big. Okay. So I like it that way. But anyways, all right. So, everyone, thank you for stopping by and, joining me on the show. I hope it was educational. Hope you had fun. I see one last question here. Brian the Man. Can you break down the movie The Secretary? Or do this another day? Mentally, it was fascinating to see it play out. Yeah, sure. Actually, that'd be great. I saw that on Prime, on Amazon Prime. I was like, man, I haven't seen that movie in years. The Secretary is an interesting depiction of a DS dynamic. and it's been sensationalized for movies, obviously. But what that did is it made people who didn't know think that that's what dominance and submission relationships are like, and they're not. Okay, they made it blown up. Same with 50 Shades of Grey. Okay, both of those movies, 50 Shades and The Secretary, are actually non-consensual abuse. That's what that is. Okay, and they just made it sexy. Because if you make it the real thing, where there's consent involved, where there's safe practices involved, where there's healthy communication involved, where there's negotiation of scenes, then it becomes a very boring movie. And you can't have it. Like, it's not sensational, right? Reality is much more boring than fantasy. So you want to make money, you have to make the fantasy appealing, all right? You have to have that shock value. Right. So just understand, if you see 50 Shades, if you see The Secretary, they're cool, fun movies. They're sexy, but it's nowhere near the reality of true BDSM. Okay. But yeah, that's a good suggestion. All right. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you, everyone, for coming through and joining me on this live. Thank you for those of you who are catching it on the replay. Check out my websites, thedominanceacademy.com. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the options available. If you have any questions, hit me on IG, thedominanceacademy_, or you can email me at thedominanceacademy@gmail.com. Okay. Until next time, I will talk to you soon. Have a good night.